Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway. From fresh produce to tender cuts of meat, Safeway proudly supports Colorado farms and local small businesses. You support local when you shop at Safeway or in the Safeway app.
Tonight is the start of an annual pilgrimage in Colorado to remember the victims held at Amache, just outside the town of Granada in southeast Colorado. During World War II, the government called it a relocation center, but the Japanese American Citizens League calls that a euphemism and says we should use more accurate language when discussing this history. They say Amache was a concentration camp where Japanese Americans were incarcerated without due process. Many died. This weekend marks 50 years of an annual pilgrimage and remembrance ceremony at Amache. I'm Bazi Kanani. Coming up, air traffic controllers lost communication for several minutes with pilots flying into DIA.
The fact that they didn't have a backup or a standby transmitter receiver for that frequency is a problem.
Also, there's new information about the oil spill in Weld County. It could be the largest in Colorado history.
This is not going to be a quick cleanup process at all.
Then, Coloradans pay their respects to a prominent civil rights activist and pastor.
He was such a beacon of hope, during challenging times.
It's Friday, May 16th. Here's the news in Colorado today. Air traffic controllers lost communication with up to 20 pilots on their way to Denver International Airport on Monday afternoon. The event occurred after multiple radio transmitters failed at the Denver Air Route Traffic Control Center in Longmont, which serves 285,000 square miles of airspace, including Colorado and many nearby states.
Typically, you have a main and a standby transmitter receiver for each frequency. But apparently in this situation, they did not have the standby receiver and transmitter.
Dave Riley spent 32 years as an air traffic controller, including 15 years at Denver International Airport.
So when it went out, the controllers had to scramble to find another frequency to use, but they had no way of getting word to those airplanes that they lost communication with.
Denver 7 first broke the story about the dropout, which happened around 1:50 p.m. on Monday and lasted 90 seconds.
The fact that they didn't have a backup or a standby transmitter receiver for that frequency is a problem. And that speaks to the age of the equipment that the FAA is working with. It's in sorely need of upgrade and repair.
The news was confirmed Thursday by the FAA's Chief Operating Officer, Franklin McIntosh, while he testified before Congress about the agency's recent safety lapses.
And I also just saw reporting this morning that air traffic controllers in Denver actually lost radio communication. So just really briefly, Mr. McIntosh, can you confirm if that reporting is actually accurate?
Thank you for the question. Some of it we feel is accurate, but I don't think the severity of it was captured correctly.
Riley said radio dropouts aren't uncommon, and on Monday, controllers knew where the planes were and at no point were any in jeopardy. The nightmare scenario is when air traffic controllers lose both radio and radar, which happened at Newark Liberty Airport twice in the last month. But both cases are a symptom of what he described as major funding shortages at the FAA.
Not only does the equipment need to be upgraded, but the air traffic controller shortage right now is at a 30-year low. There are thousands of controllers shorthanded, and these controllers are working 6 days a week. In a lot of situations, they're training a lot. They're under a lot of pressure, and you're starting to see this system fall apart.
We now know more about the size and impact of a massive oil spill in Weld County last month. It happened in a rural area. More than a dozen people were evacuated, and they're still not able to go home. According to a new filing, it's the largest spill and cleanup effort related to oil operations in Colorado in at least a decade. CPR's Ishan Thakur is reporting on the spill. Ishan, do you know what caused it and how much got spilled?
So this all started when an oil well on a pad suffered what's called a blowout, but we're not yet sure exactly why. Crude oil, chemicals, and contaminated water spewed out of that well for 4 days. The spill and plumes reached a nearby elementary school, multiple homes, roadways, and it ran into nearby waterways. That well is owned by Chevron, and the company has 90 days to reveal more information about the spill. But what we do know at this point is how much they've managed to clean up so far.
And it sounds like a lot.
Yeah, according to the most recent filing with state regulators, Chevron says at least 3.8 million gallons of fluid has been recovered. That's over 5.5 Olympic-sized swimming pools. That's by far the biggest oil and water recovery on record in Colorado in the last 10 years. Maybe even longer, but we're just not entirely sure because the records before that are not easily available. So in addition to the fluid that's been recovered, the company also dug up more than 7,000 cubic yards of contaminated soil, mulch, and gravel. So that's a few hundred dump trucks worth. Here's Greg Duranlo. He's the Deputy Director of Operations at the Energy and Carbon Management Commission. They regulate oil and gas operations in Colorado.
They removed all of the mulch in the playground areas and around the school. This is not going to be a quick cleanup process at all.
Ishan, what are the contaminants there? What was in the spill?
Chevron hasn't yet disclosed the exact makeup of the fluid, but it's likely to be some combination of crude oil and other chemicals commonly used in oil production that are known to be toxic. As of last week, state regulators said there were still 200 people doing cleanup at the site, and it's not yet clear when nearby residents will actually be able to return to their homes. But the company says a full cleanup of the area, which involves excavating soil and testing groundwater, that could take up to 5 years.
5 years. That's a big cleanup.
It is. I spoke with Aaron Weiss. He's with an advocacy group called the Center for Western Priorities. He said this is the largest oil spill he's aware of ever happening in Colorado.
If there's a silver lining here, it's that Chevron has the resources to eventually clean all of this up. But of course, it is up to state regulators, ECMC and Colorado Department of Public Health, to make sure that happens.
Weiss said the spill underscores the importance of setting oil and gas operations away from homes and making sure that companies have the resources to clean up spills.
Ishan, you mentioned the spill got into waterways. Do you know how far the toxic material may have been carried and what the health impacts could be?
Yeah, so oil reached a creek right by the well, but according to the EPA and the Colorado Department of Public Health, there's no current risk to drinking water in the area. But Chevron is still doing water sampling on site, so it's possible that that may change.
We know you'll continue to follow this. Thanks, Ishan.
Thanks so much, Bazi.
A prominent Black civil rights leader and pastor in Denver has died and is being remembered locally this weekend. Reverend Dr. James D. Peters was 92. He was pastor emeritus of Denver's New Hope Baptist Church, a congregation he led for nearly 3 decades. His son, Jasper Peters, who was also a pastor, tells us that his father found affirmation in the church.
It being the place where he was fostered and taught, and also where he understood his own self-worth. He grew up in this world that had every message for him of not being worthy of opportunity for education, for a viable career, for just basic rights and dignity. And so the church is where he learned that what the world might say about him was not true, not nearly as true as what God has to say about who he is and his worth.
As James D. Peters became a faith leader himself, he saw his ministry as a way to bring that message to others far beyond the church's walls.
He always understood there to be a connection between what it meant to be the pastor in the church and what it meant to be a pastor in the community, fighting for the well-being and rights and safety of his community.
Peters was also a friend of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was considered one of King's lieutenants during the Civil Rights Movement. Peters helped people get to the 1963 March on Washington, as he described to CBS Colorado a few years ago.
And thousands you never seen so many people. A lot of people had to bring their children because they said this is history. And it was. A lot of tears were shed.
Because, he said, they had fought for so long. Peters marched with King in Selma, Alabama, and he was a founding member of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, an important faith-driven civil rights organization. He also served on the Colorado Civil Rights Commission.
He would work to emphasize that we all have power and potential to create change, that we don't have to wait on some heroic person in order to stand up for what's right.
Arapahoe County Commissioner and former state lawmaker Rhonda Fields plans to attend Peters' funeral Saturday morning.
He was such a beacon of hope, during challenging times. He wasn't shy or he didn't shrink away from political or hard issues in the city. And he inspired so many other people to create a situation where, we would resolve issues and not have to relive it every generation. So he led with courage and compassion and faith.
A viewing is also scheduled for tonight at New Hope Baptist Church in Denver. Reporting for today's show also came from CPR's Tony Gorman. To stay connected to local news, be sure to follow Colorado Today in your podcast app. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you Monday. I'm Bazi Kanani. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway. Shop online and get $30 off your first online order when you use code SAVE30 at checkout. Get the same prices, deals, and rewards as in-store. Get started at Safeway.com or the Safeway app.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.